Hey guys, welcome to saltygingertalk.com. If you're a returning listener, it's great to have you back. If you're new to the channel, really glad you joined us and hope you like what you hear. So, we've got a super interesting guy. We continue to kind of knock it out of the park and finding awesome people to come on and share their life experiences with us on Salty Ginger Talk. So, our guest today is an author. He wrote a book that's centered around the experiences he had when he moved back in with his mother who was elderly, and he was in his 50s, unmarried, no children. And so he moved in and took care of his mom for the last years of her life. He's a super interesting guy. He's got a background in design, spent some time in Hollywood, now lives in France, and has written this book. I think you're going to learn a ton from listening to him. So, without further ado, let's just bring Mark on right now. So, Mark, welcome to Salty Ginger Talk. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure, and I look forward to some salty ginger talk.
We'll see where it takes us. We're never sure because, we do
Yeah.
our show completely unscripted, just based on some previous conversations with our guests. And you and I had a great conversation a few weeks ago, and I've been looking forward to getting you back on because you have a super interesting story. And I think there's a lot of lessons in there for our listeners. And that's kind of the point of our podcast is so people can learn through other people's experiences what's gone well for them, what they learned from it, what hasn't gone well for them, what they learned from that, and just kind of, life in general. We tend to attract high quality people like yourself, and really glad to have you on. So, with that, maybe you could give the listeners just a brief background. I know you're a Jersey boy, but spent a lot of time on the left coast, and now you're in Europe, and just kind of paint with a broad brush there and walk folks through those steps, and then we'll dive into the heavier stuff, like
Right.
around the time you spent with your mom, end of her life.
Okay. So I grew up in Ridgewood, New Jersey. That's up in the northeastern county of New Jersey. I have five brothers and sisters. Number five. I have two older brothers, two older sisters, younger sister. I am now the tallest, and my brothers tortured me quite a bit, and payback is coming. The book may be part of that. But my both of my parents worked full time. My dad was a chemist, and mom was a proofreader for the largest newspaper in Jersey. And then I left. Ridgewood was a lovely place to grow up in. I went to Ohio State University and studied industrial design. And then the acting bug, and I have to blame my mom for this because I have a chapter in the book called Our Champion of the Arts. She got us into the arts and especially performing and the ballet and all that stuff when we were kids. And the acting bug bit me again, and I gave up a really good design career to go out to Hollywood to join the very stable employment of being an actor in Hollywood. And I kept designing on the side because I enjoyed eating and I didn't want to be a starving actor. So, and that was it. And then I started a lot of, I call it nonprofit businesses on the side in Hollywood. Um, and though I say that none of them were intended to be nonprofit. So, um,
Right.
yeah. As Nelson Mandela says, I don't fail, I learn. So I learned a lot from these experiences and took them to the next one. So that was a good thing to do. You take a chance, you learn what you can, and you move on. And so that's it in a nutshell.
Love it. Yep. And one thing I do through the podcast is just kind of we talk about a lot of themes and we hear those same things over and over again from the folks we have on. And you just talked about it. You took action, you tried a bunch of different stuff. It led you to different places. You didn't know necessarily what path it was taking you down, but you weren't afraid to take your shots. And it's led to a pretty interesting and I would argue fulfilling life. And so that's something we encourage our listeners to do is when you feel that fear, that pang, that maybe I shouldn't, most people on their deathbed regret things they didn't do, not things they did do. And,
Right.
we tell people to intelligently take their shots. And I think you're a great example of that because you've lived a lot of different lives in your life.
Yeah,
So,
I've enjoyed adventure, and part of my MO is, if I get bored, I move on, and so that's why I've never married. That could be part of it. But I have a motto, and it sounds corny, but it is, and it serves me well, is find the joy. I look for the joy and the positive in any of these adventures. And if you focus on that, it takes a lot of weight off your shoulders, and you just roll with it and say, no, this is good. I'm going to find something good. Some golden nugget will be found during this adventure, and it has served me well.
That's awesome. Talk a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, about your acting career. What did you like about that world when you were in it?
Um, well, I wanted to be a good actor, and so when I first went out to Hollywood, I started studying from day one, and the goal was to get on a show like Hill Street Blues. I wanted to be on a top show, and less than 2 years later, I was on Hill Street Blues. So that was good. And actually, design helped me land that part because I still did design on the side. I had a full-time design job actually waiting for me in LA. And but by this time, I was just kind of freelancing and focusing more on the acting. And I designed my own letterhead, and I marketed. All my design experience helped me with marketing and pushing myself. And so you put yourself out there with the headshots and a nice letterhead and a fun letter. And a casting director was casting, I think, about 4 shows that time. She was a big time casting director, called me and said, I've got good news, but it's not about acting. She says, my boyfriend's a graphic designer. I know good design, and I like your letterhead. And the casting directors have started a new organization called the Casting Society of America. And she said, would you be interested in doing our logo, the national logo? And my experience at that point was corporate identity. Now it's like called branding, but it was corporate identity. So that was right in my wheelhouse. And I said, sure. And I met all the gatekeepers in Hollywood, the main ones, because they were on the board. And the lady who cast Hill Street Blues was on the board. And we got along great with all of them. And I did some funny logos with the casting couch and all that business. They got a kick out of that. But she called me in when she thought I was right for something. And again, I had to prove myself in the audition. And I nailed the audition, and I got a part playing the assistant DA. Just on one episode, and it might have been like the last season or the second to the last season. And that was a great way to start because if you have that credit on your resume, you're like respected at a certain level. Say, well, if Hill Street Blues like this guy, he's got to be at least a decent actor. So that was a nice start, and I didn't work again for 7 months, which is typical.
Well, it's crazy though. Hill Street Blues was must-watch TV back in the day. My parents religiously watched, so which meant I religiously watched Hill Street Blues because this was back in the day when there was three. It was pre-Fox, so there was
Yeah,
three television channels and no cable when Hill Street Blues
right.
was on television. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was a great show. And what was really fun about that show is when you do union work and you go overtime, the pay gets really interesting. So this went a long, long day, and we got into like double golden time. So my first job, I made really good money, and I said, "Oh, this
Mm.
is fantastic." But in the courtroom, you have these extras sitting, filling up the like the audience. And there was a gentleman in his 80s or so, and I thought, doesn't he have something better to do? I mean, he's there, he's getting it, he's into this thing. And so I sat with him during a break and we're chatting and I said, kind of hinting, don't you have something better to do with the time you have left? And he says, oh, no, no, I love being around you young people. You just, I feed off the energy and it's lovely. And my daughter owns this studio. His daughter was Mary Tyler Moore.
You're gonna be kidding me.
Yeah. And
Really?
he just likes that was MTM Studios that also did St. Elsewhere and Hill Street Blues, and I'm sure a bunch of other shows. I don't remember right now. And Seinfeld was eventually done there. And this guy was great. He just said he liked hanging out around his daughter's studio. And so I thought that was lovely.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great story. So you get a good role and then 7 months. That's not uncommon.
Right.
in the entertainment industry. How did you deal, like, what were your mental approach to dealing with the dry stretches and or the auditions that wound up in rejection? Because like that's very common in that industry.
Oh yeah, you got to have thick skin, and luckily, design was a pretty competitive business too, and so I was somewhat, I guess, my skin got thick a little bit from that. Um, but I did design on the side, so I had stuff to keep me busy and keep food on the table. So it wasn't that bad, but you get used to the highs and the lows, and you do your best to handle them. Again, I look for the joy in it. You know, the next part I got, it was a recurring on a soap opera. And again, that was very fun. And then usually in between, you try to do theater because they have equity waiver theater out there, and it's a small theater, and it's a way to stretch and keep in, I guess, theatrical shape. And then you invite people to come to see the show, and hopefully, if someone important comes and sees the show and likes what you do, you move on. So I studied like straight through, so you do that, and then I started doing some stand up also to fill in some of the time, and that's what got me into writing jokes and writing scenes and fun characters and stuff like that for improv class and performance and stuff. So you keep busy. There's lots that you can do during those down times. If you don't take it, let's say personally, I mean, there's a million people trying to do this same thing. So
Mm.
it's really a miracle to get any job. It's,
Yeah, it's
and if you get a steady job, that absolutely is a miracle.
yeah, and it's just a small percentage that wind up doing that too, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And it ended
played
up pretty good. I did a lot of TV. I had a good look, especially for TV, and um, I had a good run in the late '80s into like the mid '90s. I did a lot of TV work, some independent films, and I have a nice pension coming that I didn't even think about. But I'll collect that in a couple of years, and that'll pay for the wine here in France.
well, you're set. Like you're set for the rest of your life. Got your wine
Yeah,
covered, you're good to go. Um,
yeah.
did you prefer, and like forget the pay for a second, but the experience? Did you prefer theater in front of a live audience, or did you prefer TVs and movies where you were in a role but not necessarily in front of an audience that reacted to what you did?
Yeah, I think live is much better.
Mm,
That's why I like stand up because it's scary. You're on a tightrope. But I knew how to deal with people just from my experience in especially in design and marketing and stuff like that. And I saw a lot of mistakes that other stand-ups did. I didn't stick with it that long, but I had a good rapport with the audience. If someone was heckling, I turned and did the show to them
yeah.
and included them, and they shut right up. I didn't have any of these fast one-liners or anything like that to cut them down. I just started, doing the jokes to them to engage them, and pretty much everybody behaved. But it was fun, the writing and getting the heart pumping like that. And theater's the same way. It's like there's no second take. If there's some disaster on the stage, you got to roll with it. And I had a lot of improv experience too. I studied improv while I was out there, as well as theater acting and stuff like that. So it was all fun. When you're doing movies and TV, especially if you're working with the star, they get all the attention. And then when it's your part, especially if it's a really dramatic scene, you have to be ready, and you can't, play around and go to the craft service table. You got to focus because when they turn the camera on you, you got to perform because you're not going to get all those extra takes that the star may get. And they
Mm.
may just move on and they'll cut away from you if they don't like it in the editing room. So it's pretty scary. Once you get used to that, it's better, but still, there's a lot of pressure on, like I say, the lesser known people. And then sometimes you work with, I had a small part in Castaway. If you watch the movie, you can't see me, but uh, I still get money from it. Really nice residuals from that. And I was the navigator. I replaced the original navigator in the crash sequence. So you're working with Hanks and Robert Zemeckis, and Spielberg produced it. And you're working with these kind of people. And Tom Hanks is as sweet as everybody says, just a really nice guy. A lot of stars will come on, do their thing, and then go, get back to their trailer or whatever. Hanks hung around with us on the set. It was lovely. And there were four pilots plus me. And then I replaced the original guy. So I was like the fifth, and he called me the fifth Beatle, which was kind of fun. And so that was great because you get to a certain point in Hollywood, and at that point I was doing a lot of work, and so it was like I tell my agent, no small parts. But she called up one day and she goes, "There's a part. It's kind of small, but it's in a movie with Tom Hanks." I said, "All right, let me go." And I went
Mm.
and I got the part. And actually, it's funny because I live in France at the time. Um, if you can get the casting people or the producers laughing, that helps. And luckily, this situation came up, and so I had to look kind of like the previous guy, and so I passed that. And then the producer takes me outside and says, "Okay, you're going to be in a crash sequence, so you're going to be in a gimbal. We call it a gimbal. That's like a roller coaster for 3 days. Can you handle that?"
Mm.
And I said, "I dated a French girl for 7 months. I can handle anything." And I got the
I'm
part. And I
prepared.
called up my
I've got
ex-girlfriend
training.
after that and said, "Thank you. Thank you for all the misery. It paid off."
Oh, that's
And now
good
I live
stuff.
in France, and she also moved back to France. So that's really funny. Anyway, that was great, and that's been the best payday ever because it's 26 years later, I'm getting money still.
Yeah, now like I've seen Castaway 10 times at least. Me
Yeah,
personally, I love just the perseverance story in Castaway, and I actually use it in one of my podcasts. I call the podcast "Getting Over the Reef," and that was the barrier
yeah,
to getting Hanks's character off of the island is you got to get over the reef to get out where the boats are, and that was the big challenge. And a lot of people
right.
just give up and can't get over the reef, and you got to keep fighting until you get out in the open ocean. So I actually use it as uh material for the podcast. So I love that movie. Now I got to watch it again to see you in there.
Well, this is what you're going to see. I'm pointing out all the directions as we're about to get hit with 10,000 gallons of water. And
Yeah.
every time I tried to turn, Zemeckis would say, "Cut, Mark, you can't turn to the camera." And I say, "I'm in a movie with Tom Hanks, directed by Robert Zemeckis. Nobody's going to know." So they got a kick out of it, but still, in the
He would
trailer,
let,
you can kind of see the side of my face. But in the real movie, I watch it. If you stop it, you can kind of recognize me, but not really.
he wouldn't let like you write your name on your finger so you could see it when you were pointing at the radar screen.
I should have, but my hand almost, I think, got an Oscar nomination. Said that was that was very good. Anyway, so yeah,
Impressive index finger. Exactly. So you're kind of cruising along out there and then some things in your life changed related to your mom. Talk a little bit about that because that took you on a very different path than the one that you were on.
yeah. So at this point, I'm in my mid 50s, and the acting career is kind of on the wane because I'm aging out. And unless you're a big star and have a great agent, things get a little even more sparse, the opportunities. But I had a snack food company that was doing pretty well. My brother and I started this to honor my dad. He had a great snack he invented in 1963, his half pop popcorn. There's a lot of copycats since, but we started this thing and we went nationwide. But we just lost our national distribution and our national sales managers left. And then I get a call from my brother. My mother was living in the home we all grew up in New Jersey. And he said, "Mom just shut down, and the doctor cut off all meds and food, and hospice was called." And I kind of freaked out because 14 years earlier, hospice was called for my dad, and he died 2 days later. So we all rushed back, all six of us, and we were on death watch. And there was no medical reason. There was no physical pain. She just, I think, looked around. She suffered from depression at various times in her life, but she hid it very well. But this time it was shortly after her 89th birthday, and I think she just looked around and said, "Boy, if this is it, I'm done. I don't want to live like this anymore." And so I have a chapter in the book called "A Silent Scream," and I think it was a cry for help and for love to come back in her life because we had some people living in the house that were supposed to keep her company and take care of household duties. she could still walk at that point and pretty much function, but they did not get along. We didn't know how bad it was until I showed up, and you kind of sense the tension and stuff like that. So, yeah, so that was it. She was like in a semi-comatose state. We had a priest come in and deliver the last rites, and hospice was there quite a bit. And my younger sister and I hung out with hospice because we wanted to learn how to take care of our mother for as long as she wanted to be here. So we wanted to do as much hands-on work as we could. And hospice was great. They taught us, and they were very generous in letting us care for our mother. And I think my mom sensed that, we were there and we loved her and we didn't want her to go. And a few weeks later, she snapped out of it, which was great. And so that I started thinking that I got to play a bigger role in this because my brother in New Jersey was the one who hired the various people we had keeping her company. And it was a lot of work on his shoulders. And he still did, stopped in every day in the morning and the evenings. And so it was big responsibility on him. And the rest of us would, come in and visit and critique what we saw. And usually it was negative stuff. And then we would fly back out. And he would say, okay, listen, what are you going to do about it? So now I finally said, I think I got to, my mom deserved better, and I got to play a bigger role in this. So that got the wheels turning.
Yeah. So you wound up moving in full time with your mother, did you not?
Yeah. So yeah. So it's one of the strange stories. So at 55, yes, I moved into my childhood home to live with my mother. Didn't go so well on dates. Hi, I'm 55 and I live with my mother. Want to come home? Um,
She's a sound
yeah.
sleep.
So, but it was good. It was very good for me and good for her as well. I had a really good relationship with both of my folks, and she trusted me to take this on, and my siblings trusted me. And I asked for permission. Actually, I said, "You want me to do this?" And she says, "Yes." And I said, "You trust me?" She said, "Yes." And I said, "Do you trust that I will keep you healthy and safe for the rest of your life?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, that means I'm now in charge and you must obey me." And her mood completely changed. She looked me dead in the eye and puckered up her lips. And I wasn't sure if that was a sign of surrender or one wishing me luck, because she could be a tough cookie. So I gave her a kiss and hoped for the best. And it was good. It was the 3.5 year adventure that I write about in the book. And then there's a lot of backstory and lessons learned from my childhood that helped me make decisions later on in life. And I think as a son, because it's rare still, not so rare, we're catching up, but it's still about a 60-40 split that the ladies of the family take over the caregiving. And but I jumped in and again, look for the joy. I told mom, I said, if I do this, we're going to have fun. And so one of my goals was to make her laugh at least once a day. And both of my parents were pretty funny, so they made me laugh quite a bit. And yeah, it was good because I was never married and had no children. So this was my first kid. A guilt tripping, stubborn as all get out, sharp tongued lady who could barely remember my name was my first kid. So yeah, it was good though. I would have to say I was blessed to have that opportunity.
Yeah. Was it those experiences that ultimately led you to write your book? Because I know there's more than just that in your
Yeah.
book, but do you think it was those experiences that kind of spurred you on to write the book?
Well, yeah, I think from what I learned from hospice and then some research on my own, and the response I was getting from my mother, positive clues that I was on the right track. I had another friend around the same age going through something like that with her father, and so I shared some of my experience and what I was doing and what I learned from hospice, and she got some benefit out of it. And so I said, I think I got something here, but because the intent earlier was just to record family history, because I was privy to some really special moments and some interesting conversations. My mom was suffering from a little bit of dementia, so she had some visions and she had some different takes on reality that were quite entertaining, and I didn't want my siblings to miss out on that. So that was the I guess the impetus for I took a lot of notes and videos and photographs. And my first intent from my screenwriting experience in Hollywood, but how could I make this into a movie? So I look at things in a cinematic sense first, because I never wrote a book before. I wrote
Hmm.
jokes and a lot of screenplays, so that was where my experience was. But once I had that conversation with my friend, I thought a book would be the best thing to get out because I had more control certainly over it than I would with the screenplay, and also the timing would be good. I can get that out in a couple of years as opposed to screenplay. They take forever. I'm dealing with that now. I've got people we're talking to in Hollywood about it, but it's like I'll be dead and buried before it gets made
Well, it's
with a
been very
glass
well
of wine.
received. Yeah, well, I mean, it's been very well received. You've gotten a ton of recognition, a ton of
Yeah.
awards. The title is called A Cup of Tea on the Commode. So, what I mean, I get you're a comedian and you've written jokes and whatnot, but explain the title to our listeners.
Yeah. Well, my mom's favorite beverage was a cup of hot tea, skim milk, no sugar. She was a coffee drinker actually until she was pregnant with me. So I take some of the blame for that, and I've been drinking a lot of coffee ever since. Um, but at this point, she was bedridden, so getting her in and out of the bathroom was quite a chore. So I set a commode bedside, and sometimes Mother Nature took a little longer than was comfortable for either one of us. And so one morning, kind of as a joke, I said, "Would you like a cup of tea while we're waiting?" And she said, "Sure." And it became a hit. So I call these adventures my multitasking adventures. And so my mom was also a multitasker. So that became a hit and that became part of, we had a number of morning rituals or rituals throughout the day. So this became one. And when I was writing the book, this just popped up and I thought, oh, that's a catchy title and also a very special moment that we had and a very practical thing as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. What is your, I don't know, fondest is the right? What's the thing you remember the most about the time you lived with and cared for your mom when you were there?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that I did. Again, maybe this is the sun, the romantic end of it, the Italian French sun. Um, uh, I felt my mom's dignity was kind of whittled away, whether it
Mm.
was these other people living in the house or whatever. But we take for granted a lot of things. So she looked like an old lady. Her hair wasn't like well kept. I mean, she was clean and stuff, but the night dresses were these drab things, and she had no makeup on or anything like that. And so the first thing I did is I said, "We're buying you a new wardrobe. So if you want to cheer a woman up at any age, a new wardrobe will do that." So, but that was interesting. Going a middle-aged guy going out looking for nightwear for a senior. A senior was a little creepy. So I ended up doing it online because I didn't like the looks I was getting in the department stores. But there's also a fashion niche that really needs to be filled. There's not a lot of attractive clothing for senior ladies. Day dresses and night dresses were horrible looking. They looked like the one she had, but just in better shape. So when I searched online, I took out senior. I said, I want day dresses and night dresses. And I got her some really nice bright colors, pinks and blues, and one dare I say, sexy black. And her legs were still in pretty good shape for her age. So I got them on the short side, and she loved them, and she looked good in them. And then she worked full time and had the 6 kids, but she went to the beauty parlor once a week while I was growing up for a shampoo and set and got her nails done. And I knew she really liked that. And when she visited me in Hollywood, I would take her to my friend Stan's place in Beverly Hills for the movie star treatment. And I knew she loved that. Now I don't know the last time she went to a beauty parlor or had her hair done or anything. This now she had very long hair, which was lovely. So I recreated. I called it Day of Beauty, and I recreated the salon treatment at home. So in the morning, while she normally, I gave her sponge baths in the morning and also the evening. And so on Day of Beauty Day, while she was on the commode, I soaked her feet in Epsom salt. So I shampooed her hair and rinsed. And then I gave her a full body massage with some, and then body lotion because itching is a big issue as we get older. And she got a new diaper, and then she picked out what she wanted to wear. And then I got her up in the wheelchair. And another ritual we had that I almost forgot about was uh, as we get older and people are in bed, they don't hug anymore. You can't hug because it's either fragile or it hurts or it's just hard to wrap your arms around. So when I would stand her up before putting her in the wheelchair, I'd say, it's time for a hug. And we'd do morning hug. And it was lovely because she loved it and I certainly loved it. And neither one wanted to let go. So that was another lovely moment that we came up with that we did all the time. So now she's in the wheelchair and I would blow dry her hair and put it in a ponytail or for bonus points, a braid. I grew up with three sisters with long hair, so that helps. And then I did her nails. Her nails. She was a nail model in her late 20s, late teens, early 20s, and they were like the crown jewels. So I had to be very careful with those. So I took care of those and painted them bright red. And then gave her some bright red lipstick. Thought this is a nice thing to do, and she smelled good. She looked good. So I wheel her into the kitchen for breakfast, and we pass a big mirror in the dining room, and I park her in front of that mirror, and she's just beaming at her vision. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I lean in and I said, who's that pretty girl? And she just smiled from ear to ear. And it was lovely because I just thought, oh, this is a nice thing to do. But boy, I don't know the last time she looked in the mirror. I don't know the last time she looked or felt beautiful, but she did that day. And that was a lovely moment for me. And the power of that little gesture was profound. And so every morning I parked her in front of that mirror in between days of beauty also and just said, who's that pretty girl? So I wanted her to know that she was beautiful, that not only did I love her, but I thought she was beautiful. And it was great because it was also infectious. Everybody that saw her saw how good she looked and how good she felt. And it was lovely. So that was one of the lessons I learned, that wanting to feel pretty doesn't fade with age.
Man, what a great memory. You told that so well too. What a great memory that is. And I would just point out to the listeners, this is a situation where you could look at it really negatively, right? I had to move back across the country. I had to move in with an elderly parent who's not in the best health, and I have to do a whole bunch of work. And instead, look at how uh what a great memory Mark just painted for all. Like, I can see your mom sitting in front of that mirror all dolled up, like you just talked about. So that's really, really powerful. Thanks for sharing that with us. That was outstanding.
Thanks. That was cool. And it goes for men also. A couple days before my dad passed, he was always clean shaven. His hair was always combed. He had a comb, like I think in his wallet. He always had a comb handy, but he wasn't looking that great. And so my sister and I gave him a clean shave because we knew he was a strict Catholic, and we knew he wanted to meet Jesus in looking good. So he got a kick out of it, and he looked good. And we combed his hair, and it was the same thing. You wanting to feel handsome doesn't fade with age either, and also makes them really feel loved. That we take, look at those details and those small things that are not small to everybody. And so it was a really good lesson. And so I think that also helped me care for my mother in a certain way, for that experience that I had 14 years earlier.
Yeah. Yep. Makes perfect sense. So as things wound down, for your mom, do you think because of the experience you had of living with her and having those times with her, that it was easier for you to make peace when that finally happened?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think the same with my dad too. We left nothing unsaid. They knew they were loved. Both of them died in their beds, in their bedroom, in the house that we all grew up in. And I was with both of my folks when they took their last breath. And my oldest sister was with me with dad, and my youngest sister was with me with mom. And she knew. It was interesting because my dad was still very sharp to the very end, and he kept saying, I got so much to live for, and he wanted to do this and this and this, and it was a shame. He had heart disease, his body gave out. Mom, her body seemed to be okay, but her mind was the one wanting to leave. And I said, for
Mm.
someone who wanted to leave this earth so fast, she was in no rush to die because it was like 5 days, and I stayed up with her most of that time, and she slowly faded out. But I was there holding her hand for most of that time, and we still did the routine of changing her diapers and giving her a sponge bath, and I'd have to say for an exit, it was a lovely way to go, and that certainly gave me peace as well. And I pushed the grieving aside till later on, and but yeah, that definitely gave me peace, and I think it gave peace to our siblings also because they knew mom was happy, and she went out in a nice, dignified way.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great way to show your care and your love for somebody in your life to kind of be with them at the end and be able to get everything out like you just talked about. So that's nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
What has surprised you most about the reception of your book?
Well, again, it's my first book. Luckily, I landed a publisher, and it resonated with them. And I worked with two editors over about a year and a half, and their notes were always good. I had the final say on everything, but I thought their notes were all very helpful. And I wanted a quality book, again, being my first, but also I think the message is very good. I say it's not only a universal story, it's timely and timeless because we're all dealing with this at some point in our lives, or we certainly know people who will be, and I think they could find some benefit from it. And but again, you put your heart and soul into something, and you don't know if it's going to resonate with other people. Just with my siblings was interesting because I didn't share anything with them. I studied the genre of memoir, and my memoir teacher, the advice I got was you don't show it to family members because they have a different POV on everything than you do.
Mm,
Even a shared experience, they're going to have a different take on it. So I wanted this is my take. I wanted to be a very honest, and it's pretty raw also. And I don't come off as a saint. My flaws are in there, and the flaws of some of my siblings and also my folks. And I had a really good experience with both of them. And I think my siblings may not have known a bunch of those facts that I shared because our relationship was, I think, a little different maybe than the other kids. And but their response actually was quite positive. It was very nice. So that was the first hurdle. And then you start getting reviews from strangers and things, and then critics and editorial reviews and stuff. And all of it was very positive and nice. And then it started winning a bunch of awards, and that was very cool. But uh, the most humbling thing I'd say is the personal notes I get from people, and the experiences they share. There's common ones. There's interesting responses too. I have a lot of friends who will not touch this book. I don't know why they're afraid of it, but I think once you have, once you see something, you can't unsee it. And maybe once you read about it, because I know I have friends who are going through this. They have mothers and fathers in their 90s, and they, on Facebook, they'll update things, and I'll say, boy, I think they could get some benefit out of this book, but they wouldn't touch it, and I don't know why. But strangers have been overwhelmingly very positive about it, and they also say they not only they cry out loud, but they also laugh out loud. There's some very
mm.
funny moments in there, and so those were important because humor plays a big role. There's a lot, there's a lot of stress, mental, physical, and emotional stress doing the caregiving. So a sense of humor really comes into play.
Yeah. Have you done like book signings and met with audiences and those types of things?
I did before it was published. There's I'm in France here, so I haven't done it in the States, but there was a group of retirees, and I presented a couple chapters to them, and uh, and they were great. The reception was lovely. And then one of the ladies, I thought, oh, this is going to be good for our age group. I was younger than most of them, but still, the people are interested. And this one French woman stood up and she said, "When's this coming out? Because I want to buy it for my children." And I thought, wow, there's a whole nother market segment I didn't think about. So they want to train their kids how to take care of their parents. And I thought that was lovely. And I did actually a couple months ago did a signing in Montpellier, which is a city about an hour away from here. And that was fun. A lot of interesting questions, a mix of French and expats. And it's lovely to have these discussions. So I read, I think, just one chapter, and then we started talking about stuff, and people were asking all kinds of advice, including financial advice and stuff, which I really couldn't help them too much on that. But it's lovely to do that. And I've been doing, of course, a lot of these interviews that I can do remotely. And yeah, so we'll see. More
Yeah.
signings would be lovely, but
How did you wind up in France?
an ex-girlfriend of mine put the bug in my ear. She always wanted to retire in France, and I hadn't been to France yet. I've been to Italy, where my grandfather came from, and felt very comfortable in Italy. But the first time I came to France was lovely, and I felt even more comfortable here than in Italy. And we have French on my mom's side. Her grandmother married a Frenchman. I'm not sure if she married him over here or back in the States. But so we have French, and my mother's name is Genevieve. And as a kid, I always called her Genevieve just for fun because I thought it sounded more French and lovely. So that was interesting. When we were no longer a couple, she was always looking for properties over here. And she found a property not far from where I live now. And so I said, I'll join you if we want to go in and make it an investment property. That might be pretty cool. And we stayed at Airbnb in this village, and I fell in love with the village. The people were so lovely, and the place was great. And then when I found this thing, this apartment, I said, that's it. So I put an offer in that was accepted, and a couple of years later, I moved here. And so this is my actually where I write. I'm sitting at the table where I wrote the book. So I couldn't write it right away. I get very emotional, especially with family issues, and so I needed some emotional distance as well as physical distance before I could sit down and write the actual book.
Sure. What was your talk a little bit about your process of writing the book? I know you talked about taking a lot of notes and videos and things like that. How did you think about organizing it? That had to be a challenge for since you've never done
Yeah.
it before.
Right. Structure was, I think, the most difficult thing for me. I had, so it was a couple of years before I actually sat down and started writing. So I had, again, all the notes, but in between, I'm like I go in spurts. I go, oh, this could be good for the book. So I would just jot down a note. So I had tons of notes all over the place. And then I wrote it. I wrote the chronological present day of caring for mom. And I said, well, that's going to be boring. So that's when I started adding backstory. So I said, okay, this chapter deals with this. Why did I do that? What led me to make that decision? And so I went back into my childhood and said, oh, this is because I watched mom do this with animals, and she was very loving and caring and nurturing and all that kind of stuff. And so what I love about the writing is you open a door and then several others open. And I'm going, oh my, I got memories back till I was, from 2 years old. And one of them's in this book. The other one may go in my next book is going to focus more on my dad. And it's amazing where just the synapses go off and all these things just start flooding in. So, and then you find out what's appropriate or not. So I took a couple stabs at the structure. I had all the guts. Now is what order to put them in. And so I tried to do it in like 5 phases of this is when the crisis started. This is when I made a decision to move back. This is what happened there and all that business. So it was originally like about 5 acts. And then, so I played around, and it wasn't that I hired my actual memoir teacher to be the first editor. And she gave me some great notes, and I focused a lot on the people who were living in the house because that was quite a thing. And I didn't get along with them either. And we were stuck together for about 7 months that we lived in this house. So I had roommates for the first time since I was in college. And, and she said, the story is not about them. So get rid of them quick. And for an Italian New Jersey, that's all I needed to hear. So they're buried in the backyard somewhere. And so, which is good. And so then I focused more on mom and me, and then family stuff and things that I thought were important to move this story along. And then when I got the publisher, they were great too because you have fresh eyes. Because when you're writing your own personal experience, you go, "Oh, I know this because I know the whole backstory." Well, a stranger doesn't know the whole backstory, so it has to make sense to a new reader. And that's when the editors from the publisher were very helpful. And so we just kept honing it, um, yeah. So I'm happy with how it came out, and I'm sure they are as well, and the readers seem to like it, and yeah. So, but structure was the most difficult part for me.
Did you find the creative process to acting different than writing, or is there a lot of similarities?
Well, for me, I think there's a lot of similarities. While I'm glad I was alone because there were times I was just bawling at my desk writing because you go back and
Mm.
you're re-experiencing those moments. And it was funny because I couldn't do, the book was released on Mother's Day, and I wanted to do the audio version, and I just knew I couldn't get through it. Even with all
Mm.
my acting experience, I couldn't do it. So it took 6 months before I thought I could handle it. And I set up a studio here and started doing recording, and I was able to look at my book with fresh eyes, which was lovely because I revisited it. First of all, when you're doing the audiobook, normally when you're writing, you read your stuff out aloud to make sure it sounds good and
Mm.
words flow. But boy, when I was recording the audiobook, there were some sentence structures and stuff. I'm going, who wrote this? This is so difficult to say. So I actually changed the words because I couldn't put these things together. It reads fine, but oh my God, it was terrible. But what I loved about that is I had a very interesting realization. So when you read the story, it sounds like I went back and rescued my mom, which in a sense I did. But when I was doing the audiobook, upon reflection, I think mom actually rescued me. And that rocked me. I'm going, wait a minute, because again, I never married, have no children. Unconditional love was not something that I really dealt with. And again, my MO was, if I was bored, I moved on. But with this situation with mom, there was no moving on. I had her counting on me, and her life was literally in my hands. But I also had my siblings that were counting on me, and I didn't want to let anybody down. But I had this opportunity to do something very important in my life. And up to that point, I felt I didn't really, and so this was as an actor, it was the best role I ever played. And as a man, it was a lovely experience. And so mom gave me this opportunity, whether consciously or not, and I was smart enough to jump on it. And so that was a lovely revelation, even, looking at my book a few months after.
Yeah, it's super interesting to me because we have such a diverse it's very eclectic, the folks that come on our podcast, which we love. Like I'm like kind of like you. I can obsess over and focus on specific things, but I like variety. If I don't get challenged, then like I get stagnant, and that's not a good place for me to be. But I always find it so interesting people's paths. We had a guy on, his episode's going to air in a week or so, and he's a musician. Loved music from the time he was a kid. played in a band, and his band started to experience some commercial success. And he hated almost everything, everything about it. Like it was no longer about the music; it was about producing music that would be popular on the radio, and he really disliked that. Continued to play music throughout his life, and so what he does now, he started a foundation that uh, does dedications during live shows. So there's kids that are sick, immunocompromised, quarantined, they're by themselves. And for them to get some hope, they'll go to an artist, and they've gone to some pretty big artists and said, "Hey, in the middle of the show, if you can just do a shout out to Jeff or Chris or whoever that's in the room, look in the camera. We love you. We're thinking about you. We want you to get better," that kind of thing. And in a million years, he never would have thought that's what he's done it for 15 years now. His foundation. That's all he does is this foundation. And it's music that led him there. You'd never think that's where it would lead you.
Yeah.
And so like you start in design, then you decide you want to go into the entertainment industry and you wind up taking care of your mom, and that leads you to writing a book. Like it's just wild how people's paths wind up to me.
Yeah.
Um, and you wouldn't have experienced it if you didn't take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to you. And you don't even know the thing is you don't even know their opportunities when so
Right.
sometimes it's just stuff you got to do.
Yeah.
But I love your find the joy thought process on it, because if you've got to be doing it, you may as well have a good time while you're doing it, right?
Yeah. 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 Even really well, that's where the humor comes in too. If the joy's not there, you got to make a joke about it because there are some very dark times also. And I also had a motto when I was in the snack food business because that ended up being, boy, almost a one-man show. My brother was on the East Coast doing selling and stuff, but I built a factory and I designed the equipment to be able to do this one-man operation. And it was exhausting. And still, no matter how tired you were at the end of the night, you had to wake up at 6 in the morning, get started all over again. And so part of the joy there, my motto there would be, I love my job, I love my job, I love my job. And I said, if I said it long enough and as many times as possible, I would convince myself that, yes, I love my job. And the fingers are bleeding and your back is killing you and all this stuff. But I love my job. And what was fun about that, it was, the motivation was honoring my dad. So you have his snack food on shelves of Whole Foods and Safeway stores around the country. It was pretty cool. So that made it worth it. Um, but yeah, there's definitely a way to look at something to make it easier to get through it. And it's too easy to look at the negative stuff and dwell on it. It's not that much harder to look at the positive and focus on that. And so I choose that.
Yeah, that's well said. I think that's a great motto and a great way to look at it. Plus, there's not a lot you can do about some of your circumstances anyway. So it's really more a matter of how you react to them than it is
Right.
changing them in many instances, because a lot of things you don't have a choice on. You don't get to
Right.
choose when your
Yeah.
parents get sick and need your help. You don't get to choose when you've got to make a career change because your old job went away or whatever, right? There's a lot of things that are out of
Right.
your control.
Right.
So
You can choose how to deal with it.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And you can choose what your attitude is. So I do find it interesting though. I was thinking about this while you were talking. When did you realize, or maybe you didn't realize, I don't know. Did you realize early on that creativity was important for you to have in your life? Because you go design, you go acting, you do stand up, you write the book. All of those are very creative ventures. It seems like that's a thread of constant existence in your life.
Yeah. I think my dad was he was a chemist, but also kind of a clever guy and invented a lot of little things. And that got me going. I invented things as a kid and was always doing drawings. And when he was doing the snack food company, I was drawing the factory and how that would go. And it was funny because years later, when I did this, I visited a factory what looked a lot like in my drawings that I did in parochial school. I'm going, oh my God, it's one conveyor belt that does the whole thing, and it's lovely. And then my mom got us into the performance. We were all involved in the ballet, a good part of our lives, and and that was great because my brother and I were the only guys in the school, so that was lovely. Uh,
Good ratio,
and
huh? I like it.
yeah, but we performed. I started out, my first gig was in Lincoln Center when I was like 7 years old. So that was a nice way to start. And I got
No
paid
kidding.
$5 a show. It's funny. So about 40 years later, I'm in Hollywood and I'm doing an equity waiver play. I'm getting about the same pay. So my start at 7 was much better. That was like probably $1 million a show in today's dollars. Uh, but that's Hollywood anyway. So yeah, creativity is, and it still is. In this, I design this house. I design furniture. And I used to carve and do fun stuff as a kid. And then I started carving it after 50 years. I did. I got these big guy. Oh, I'll show you one. If you want. So recently did this guy was about a
Holy
meter
moly.
tall, and that's one of my book awards. Yeah. So this is not a self-portrait, but people think it is. So maybe my hair is getting right there. But when you do these things as a kid, it's one thing. Boy, now I'm in my 60s. It's exhausting carving wood. Oh my God. And these are huge. So it's like, oh, I'm not sure how many I'm going to get out of this. But anyway, he's a good guy. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting you to hold up a giant statue like that. I was thinking you're going to pop up like a little flute or something that you carved out of wood.
Yeah.
That's crazy. How long have you been carving? How long have you done that?
Well, I just started this again. I took a 50-year break. So actually, what's fun on the website, a cup of tea on the commode.org, I have it's bonus material, I think is the section now. And I have a lot of stuff that I talk about in the book that weren't, you don't see photos of. So I have all the carvings I did as a kid on the bonus materials. And you see our house, 1950 when it was bought and when we sold it and things like that. So there's a lot of fun photos. There's a documentary of the trip to Italy that I took my dad on that I'm going to expand a lot more on his book. But there's a chapter about that because that's our Italian roots in Mom's book. And yeah, so I mean, the creativity continues, with all the social media stuff and I've done about 180 of these little teaser videos, which are mostly on the fun side regarding the book and stuff. And yeah, it's good. So now we're talking with Hollywood people, and we'll see what happens with that. But and it's going to China. It's China were the first ones to buy the foreign rights, so they've got a few readers over there. So I may be a
Yeah,
star in China.
a couple readers over there. Yep.
Yeah.
Do you have any desire to try to get back in front of the camera?
Not really. Somebody asked me that. They said, "Would you want to play the part?" And I said, "No, no. I'm done with that. I would rather first of all, I'd rather have more control." So if the Hollywood thing works out, I'll probably take the first crack at the screenplay,
Hmm,
and then we'll see where it goes from there. But not really. I think we're done with that.
gotcha. How about stand up? Do you have any desire to do stand up again?
No, not at this age. No.
You got all different material now, though.
Yeah, well, I'll put it in the books. You know what's interesting though? I put a few of my jokes in Mom's book, and there'll be more in my dad's book because a lot of my jokes were based on my childhood and stuff like that. So they're definitely a good place for them in certain chapters of the book. So that's where it goes into the writing, not so much the performance.
Sure, makes sense. Makes sense. What so you've lived in France for a bit now. What's the biggest difference from your perspective on living in Europe versus living in the United States?
They are, I'll tell you a quick story and why I'm so comfortable here. So, in September of 2016, when we finally finalized the deal here. So now it's my place. I'm doing renovations, and a notaire is your lawyer for your real estate transactions. And the notaire that I had is Bernard, a really prominent man in town. And so we became really good friends. And he said, "You want to go to a vendage?" And I said, "Yeah, let's go." I had no idea what a vendage was. It sounded French, so good enough. And we were going to a wine domain just outside of town, And the vendange is a celebration of the harvest. This was mid-September. And you go, and if you want, you cut grapes. And so I said, of course, I want to experience all this stuff. So I'm cutting grapes in the vines, and a jazz band is following us down the vines. Guitar, string bass, saxophone, clarinet, and a lady on the washboards for the percussion. And I'm
This is
like,
like out. This is like out in the vineyard.
yeah, yeah. And I'm like, I'm in a French movie and a strange one, but the music was great. And you're cutting grapes, and then you realize you're cutting grapes for hundreds of meters, and you go, I'm doing this because the music's great, and I'm having a good time. But it was lovely because the chateau was this lovely, like French chateau. You went up these very high stone steps across a moat, and I'm in a French movie. And there's animals, I think sheep and goats or something on the barbecue. And we're cutting the grapes, and the band, when we're done with the grapes, the band set up at the chateau, and the whole village starts coming with side dishes because the main meat is being barbecued, and of course they're serving wine all day, and it's just absolutely lovely. And later on that evening, the guy who was doing the barbecue, his name was Hassan. He spoke some English, and we talked for a bit. And then later on in the night, because Bernard knew the people that owned the domain, I hung out with them. And just a few of us left now, and a few people are still playing music. And Hassan sits next to me, and he says, Mark, you're American, yes? I said, yeah. And he goes, you must stop, because they know Americans just want to work all the time, and we eat on the run. And he goes, you must stop and take this all in, because this is the life in the south of France. And I started crying. I said, I'm home, because they have the way of living correct. It's the social, the good food, good wine, and chilling. They work is important, but not as much as this. And they take the 2-hour lunches during the day, which is lovely because the kids come home from school and the family has their meals together. The store, at least in this area, the stores close at 7:30. There's no 24/7, whatever Ralph's or whatever the stores are. On Sunday, everything closes at 12:30, which is lovely, except for maybe the boulangeries, which are the bakeries. And it's lovely. And the healthcare is lovely. The wine is cheaper than water, and it's good. If you're into wine, it's heaven. If you're not, it's a frickin' nightmare. But it's lovely, and there's domains everywhere, and they're so passionate about the wine, the cheese, the bread also. But the wine, there's so many domains here. This is the largest wine growing region in the world. And you could stop off at these little mom and pop domains and sit with the owners, and they're so passionate about their wine. You could sit for hours, even with my bad French, and have a lovely time sampling their wine, and they tell you the history of their domain. And usually, you leave with a couple of cases or something, and it's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, the weather's certainly lovely and all this stuff too, but just to relax and chill is lovely. Now, they are crazy on the road. I will say that the French drivers are, they say, the joke is if you want a Frenchman to do something fast, put him in a car. Other than that, they're very chill.
I was going to ask you about that because I remember it from our first conversation. You had said that the driving over there is quite an adventure, at least in France.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't know what safe distance is. I don't think they like their brakes. Speed bumps mean nothing. They like airtime, and they're right on your tail all the time. I've had people pass me in a frickin' parking lot. They just got to get somewhere, and I don't know where they have to get to. Usually, maybe they got to get a cigarette or something, but and they smoke way too much. I'll say that too. They haven't gotten the notes. But other than that, I mean, my French friends here, they keep apologizing for their bad English. And I said, no, where do we live? It's my problem.
Yeah.
So they're just sweet. And yeah, so they've got it right, how to live. And it's not what I would say is like, the blue zone things, but it's kind of because there's a lot of expats here and they hang out, they play petanque together. They'll have coffee groups together and things like that. And my girlfriends and I are some of the younger people in town for the expats. Uh, it's just great. It's fun. And plus being here, you're so close to everything. I've been, to London. I've been to Spain and Germany and Switzerland and Monaco and all that stuff is lovely. And of course, Italy. And my sister was teaching at an international school in Albania a few years ago, so I went to Albania. That was quite an adventure. But lovely food, and the people love Americans. And so that was a nice experience as well. But yeah, it's very cool.
Do you think that's final destination for you? Do you think you live in France the rest of your life?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Hope it's a long one, so I can maybe have some doubts about that later. But I just got my updated passport, which was lovely, and I could do that at home, which was great. And, because the embassy, I think the closest one is Paris, so I'd have to go to Paris. But I shot my own picture on the iPhone. Then you send it to a place that says, we'll guarantee that it meets the qualifications for a passport photo, and then I just received it back without leaving my house. So it was great.
How does so how do like taxes and things work? Like, are you on a green card or like how do you exist in France? I mean, you're still an American citizen. Do you have dual
Yeah.
citizenship or how does it work?
No, I can't get dual. You've got to really know your French language. Plus, I have an American friend here who's fluent in French, and wants to get her dual citizenship, but it's still about like a 7 or 8 year process. I have no
Wow.
interest in that. I'm a permanent resident right now. I just got, let's say, my 10-year resident card, and that took 6 years of doing annual. Um, and at a certain age, you don't have to deal with the language requirement. Yet the whole interview is in French, so you got to know something. But boy, that was a nightmare in itself because you get nervous anyway. But now you're nervous dealing with the government, and so that was quite interesting. So I had no idea if I was getting my 10-year or another 1 year, and I got the 10, so that was great. Um, yeah, and the taxes, they have an agreement. France and the United States have an agreement. So I have a French accountant and my American accountant. So the American taxes are first, then I send that information to the French, and so there's no double taxation,
Wow,
which
that's
is
a big
nice.
win.
Yeah, yeah. At least I think so. It's in French, so I have no idea. I may be totally screwed over here. I have no idea. It just sounds good. They
If
go,
somebody
drink the
busted,
wine. It's fantastic. Okay.
I was gonna say if somebody
But
busts
I'm
the door
having
and
the best time.
somebody busts the door in while we're talking, I'm gonna think it might be related to taxes. But we'll call what'd you say his name was? Bernard? We'll call your real estate guy and see if he can help you out if
Yeah.
the if the if the
Okay.
cops show up.
Yeah. So far, no, they're fun. Yeah, I guess it would be scary with the gendarmes and stuff like. Usually, I just say America. Usually, they say anglais, which is English, and I'll go,
Hmm,
yeah. So they can't find me.
that's
No, it's good.
awesome.
It's a lovely place.
Yeah. So I always open the floor up to our guests. So is there anything I haven't asked you about that you think is worth talking about, or are there any subjects you feel strongly about that you want to talk about to kind of expose our audience to those things while we're here together?
Well, I'll give you some tips for the caregivers. Uh, they say you got to take breaks because the emotional, mental, and physical stress can creep up on you. So I didn't listen to the pros, but I know that they say you got to take the breaks, and there's a reason why on the airplane they say put your oxygen mask on first. And my mom almost outlived me because the stress got to me, and I had to go through three emergency surgeries during our adventures,
Holy
uh,
moly.
which was interesting. Yeah. So they think it might have been stress related, and it could have been. But I had what was lovely about my job with my mom, that was my motivation to get back on my feet and get out of there.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, it was something. But also, empathy is a very important thing. So our loved ones are no longer the person they were. They still deserve love and dignity and stuff like that, but they're going to be a little slower. They may not remember. My mother didn't remember my name early on, and I'm the only one wiping her butt several times a day. And out of her six kids, I'm the one she couldn't remember. So I have a chapter in the book titled "Does Wiping Butt Cause Amnesia?" And I think it does. So, but I could have taken that personally, and I didn't. Again, roll with the humor, and because I thought she was joking, and when I found out she wasn't, I printed my name out on large black letters and taped it to the ceiling. So when I would come in the morning, she'd be laying in bed. So I'd say good morning, and she'd say good morning, and her eyes would shoot up to the visual aid, and she would turn to me and say Mark, and was very proud. And so after a few weeks, she got it and remembered my name. But that was interesting in the beginning. So yeah, I would just say yeah. I mean, I learned certainly unconditional love, empathy, but I had a good grasp on empathy from my acting and design career because you have to put yourself in the other people's shoes,
mm.
and then patience. Patience is not a great thing for people in New Jersey. It's tough. But boy, you got to learn it. And my mother hated swearing. She never swore. I don't think my dad ever swore either. But I did. And there's some salty talk. And when I would swear, I would, I knew she didn't like it. So I apologized and say, sorry, Mom, but this parenting this is tough. And she goes, oh, I guess, but I never swore. And she had, she raised six of us. So, but she was funny. She'd say things like nincompoop and I'm fed up and fudgy wudgy. And that was about it. My dad, when he got mad, food came to mind. He'd say, you're full of soup, you're a chowderhead, or get the ham out of here. So it was like, this is what we grew up with. So say the swear words are a different story. So I got better in time, or I tried to keep it out of the room. But yeah, anyway,
You're
it was
full of
good. And
soup.
also,
That's a new one. I haven't heard that.
yeah, full of soup. Oh my God. I got that one a lot growing up. I know that one. So
Yeah, the chowderhead I've definitely heard. I lived in New England for 15 years, so I've heard my share of chowderhead
yeah,
for sure. So yeah, it's interesting on the patience one, isn't it? Patience is such a hard thing for most of us. And I'm certainly guilty of it myself. There's times where like if I could have just kept my mouth shut or waited a minute before I said something or waited a minute before I did something, I probably would have got a lot better outcome than the
yeah,
one that I tried to force, you know?
yeah. Well, they have the thing, well, people will count or something. You know what? I have to tell you this because now I'm in the longest relationship I've had.
Mm.
2 weeks. We're 2 weeks. No. But what I loved about her in the beginning, again, she's Swiss French, though she speaks English fluently. She has a sister who lives in California, so she learned English. So I can't get away with anything. But I had very early on in our dating, we call it, let's say, rage. We joke. We say, "Oh, you're raging." So I was raging about something, not about her, but just something. And I'd have to say any previous girlfriend would have jumped right in and said, "Oh, why are you so angry?" Well, and just I'm the problem and all that stuff. Jackie just didn't say a word, and I look at her and I go, "Oh my God, this is special." She let me rage and didn't judge, didn't try to stop it, just let it go, and then we talked about it after. And I do the same thing with her. She has her moments. You say, okay, it's a moment. It's not about me. There's nothing I can do right now. Let it go. And then if we have to talk about it, we talk about it. But that was a lovely moment. And I said, oh, I got something here. So that was nice.
She's willing to tolerate this. She's worth keeping around.
Yeah, yeah. So that's whether that's patience or just intelligence, I'm not sure, but it was good. Uh, but mom, I'll tell you another story, which the guilt tripping. So,
Mm,
um, when the parents say this will hurt me more than it hurts you, kind of
yes.
thing. Okay, so you hear that and you're going, that doesn't make any sense for what I'm going through. So, there was a time where again, mom, with this depression would creep up every once in a while where she would just zone out. And I'm cooking all her meals and not only wiping her butt, but cooking her meals and taking care of all the meds and all that stuff like that and cooking good meals. And so I cook her a really nice dinner and she's in the kitchen and she's just out. Doesn't want to eat, doesn't want to talk, does nothing. And I said, listen, mom, you got to keep up your strength. You got to eat your meal. And she didn't budge. And I said, listen, I do all these things. I do the grocery shopping. I carry you up and down the stairs. I wipe your butt. I clean you. I do your laundry. I do this and this. You have to show some appreciation to eat your meal, please.
Mm,
And nothing. And so I flicked off the light in the kitchen. She's in a wheelchair at the kitchen table. I flick off the light in the kitchen, leave her in the dark, and I go down the basement to take my anger out on a innocent load of laundry. And so after I bang get the wash started and bang the lid down, I go back up for round two. I get in the kitchen, I turn on the light switch, and my mom's sitting, of course, still at the table, but her hands are folded in her lap. Her utensils are on her plate that is clean. She ate the whole thing in the dark. Not easy at any age.
right.
And it just killed me, broke my heart. And I
Mm.
didn't know what to say. I just leaned in and said, thank you. And I said, she out guilt tripped me again without doing anything. So she showed me, I guess the way to handle that. And it was lovely. And it was a lovely lesson. But oh my gosh, that was a killer. So those are like say my parenting lessons that came out of I guess a bad moment on my part, certainly. Um, but that was great. And mom showed me how to deal with it. So she was still teaching.
Yeah, it's funny. You've referenced that a couple of times that, you're providing the care and the leadership and et cetera, but you're still learning, like you're still getting lessons even through all of that. It's,
Yeah,
life's just funny that way.
yeah, yeah. So if you keep an open mind and open heart, it's amazing what comes in.
Yeah. Yep. And that's exactly what we talk about on our podcast is just like keep your mind open. You don't have to accept everything. You don't have to endorse everything that you hear, but don't you want to know it? Like, aren't you in a better spot from having all this experience from all these people that are willing to share it with you? Like, we're so lucky to be able to talk to people like you that have all these experiences and we can learn from these experiences if we're willing to just ask a couple questions and then absorb the information. Like, it's
Right.
gold. Like, it's such a good gig for me. Like, selfishly, I get to learn so much from all these different people. It's such
Yeah.
a good gig. So,
Yeah. And I felt that time with my mother was selfish kind of on my part because I had all those uh, lovely moments and experiences that the other kids missed out on. And so again, that was one of the reasons of recording all this so they wouldn't miss it all. And yeah, so that's part of being, I think, the second youngest kid. I could be a little selfish in life, so that was my way of doing it. But I did something good out of it. But it was definitely something I wanted to do. So
well, some of that survival being 5 of 6, though, too, right? Or 4 of 6. Which one were you? 5 of 6?
five, one
Yeah.
younger sister. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. You got a squeaky wheel gets the grease in those situations. If you're too quiet, you can get lost in the shuffle with 4 older brothers and sisters.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, they may think I'm the squeaky. Well, no, actually, my middle sister is the one who's really emotional with the loud. very loud, loud laugh also, but a loud voice and the other thing. But yeah, I guess I'm the only one who did it professionally. I squeaked professionally. Um,
Oh, exactly. Well, Mark, it's been great having you on. Really appreciate it. We would love, as you kind of work through the process on the script around the book, and when you publish your second book, I'd love to have you back on to talk about
oh,
that
great.
book
Yeah, yeah.
when you're done with the
There's
one
a
about
lot
your
of,
dad. So,
yeah, he was a very interesting character. So I think that's going to be a fun one.
yeah, we'd love to have you back on to talk about it. I've really enjoyed our conversation and really appreciate you sharing so much about your experiences with our listeners. I think there's tons and tons of value there. And I know it's a little bit later over there, so appreciate you sticking it out and staying up at night to do the episode with us now. And just really look forward to having you back on the next time.
Cool. And just so you know, this is when I do these podcasts and interviews and stuff, it keeps my mom in the present, which is lovely. So that is your gift to me. So I very much appreciate that.
Well, we're happy to do it. We will include the link to Mark's book in the show notes and highly recommend. You got it. He was good enough to send us a copy of it. And so I've made it through the first several chapters, but it's on my reading list. I've always got 3 or 4 books going at once, so I kind of rotate from book to book. And that's the other thing of doing what I'm doing is I get access to so many books, like such interesting stuff. So really appreciate it. We'll make sure that the links here for our listeners that want to check out the book, A Cup of Tea on the Commode. Love the title. And I think it fits your personality perfectly. So thank you again so much, Mark, for coming on. Really appreciate it. And keep us on the radar for when you're ready to do it again when you write your second book.
Great. Okay. All right. Thanks, Joe. Take
Thanks so
care.
much. Have a great
We'll
night.
see.
Thanks again.
You too. Bye.
Okay, guys, like we said, we keep finding awesome people. We keep thinking, man, it's going to be tough to find as good of people as we found, and then we keep finding them. So, super great job by Mark's very entertaining guy, and he's got a way of weaving a story and explaining things in ways that resonate and make sense. Loved hearing about his experiences in Hollywood, loved hearing about his experiences growing up in New Jersey and being a part of a 6 sibling family. And loved hearing the stories about his mom and dad and the time he had with his mom in the last years of her life. So, super interesting stuff. Just really appreciate him spending all that time with us and sharing all those anecdotes and his memories and his lessons with us. So thank you again, Mark. Really, really appreciate it. We will include the link to his book, A Cup of Tea on the Commode, in the show notes. And yeah, just we keep finding awesome people to come on, and we're really appreciative of them sharing their time with us. So don't forget, James puts it up right over here every day. Head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. Links to all of our social media accounts are there. We've got links to all of our podcasts on there. And we publish a newsletter every weekday that you can subscribe to on our website as well. And please, if you're able to, like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you consume it on. It's super helpful for us when you do that. Keep coming back. We've got more and more people coming on, more interesting people, great life lessons, great perspectives. Like Mark said, right? Find the joy. Find the joy in what you're doing. And we're going to keep bringing you awesome people like that to help you shift your mindset, build the life you want to build, and really develop a mindset that sets you up for success. So don't forget to check us out again. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Thanks a lot.